Well, a very good morning to you watching Breakfast Extra. The news reaching us this morning is that there is a fire outbreak ongoing now in Christ Embassy Church right in the Oregun chapter. So wherever you are at the moment, please be mindful of that access. In the meantime, this is a PSA to all the emergency agencies, and that's NEMA, the fire services, to please make their way to Christ Embassy Church, Oregun. We'll bring you more details as the show progresses, but also to Lagosians as well that will be driving or plowing that route. Please be aware that there's fire there. So as the emergency agencies and also all their vehicles and force responders are making their way down, please make way for them so that they can put out the fire, especially at this time. Again, a very good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast Extra. And if you're watching this broadcast in Lagos, I hope you're keeping safe from the cholera outbreak that the state is currently dealing with. Lagos State is proof that if you can leave by the riverbank and yet wash your hands with saliva, because how else do you explain being surrounded by water and can't, clean just clean after yourself, all right? And cholera is infamously called a disease of poverty, which might explain why our leaders never have rich ideas. And if you doubt me about cholera, if you doubt me, just Google what is cholera, and I promise you, that is what will show up on your screen, on your mobile screen. Anyway, in the meantime, the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAN, says it is launching a task force to eliminate illegal activities, and touting at Nigeria's airport. Okay, but that's your job. What do you want? A cookie? The only thing more annoying than this announcement to me are the flight announcers at the airports. Just open your mouth and speak up, or just do what to, I don't know, just make your announcements, or do what to make an announcement to fix that as well. Maybe find a way to announce to fix that issue, if you're going to be making announcements about doing your jobs. I, for one, will like nothing more than, for people at the helm of affairs to just get to work and do away with the announcements already. I am done with it. By the way, I'm making an announcement. A show is about to start. Well, one announcement caught my eye, over the week, and it was Dawanki Tofa Bature, the spokesperson of Abba Yusuf, who's the governor of Kano State. And he said that the ongoing emirship tussle in the state is a fight to the finish. And if there's anything you can trust a man to do, it is to finish. Ladies, you know what I mean. But will the outcome satisfy the other party? Only time will tell. In the meantime, we sit by keenly watching with our popcorns. Where's my popcorn? Mizuno, where's my popcorn? So while the spokesperson has declared no retreat, no surrender, we're all side-eyeing the NLC and organized labor. Bombastic side-eye. Because what is this cricket silence that we're hearing? Please, look at your mates and fight to the finish. Please fight to the finish and get us this minimum wage. Now, while it looks like others may be giving up on the fight, we, and that's yours truly, Judith TV, and my co-host Mizuno Appeal, has powered through to give the final installment of this week's Breakfast Extra. This is the final one for the week, and we're excited. Aren't that right, Ms. Isn't that
yes,
right?
indeed. Absolutely. Now, first off, I wanted to say something very interesting that you should mention about the announcers at the airport. They are annoying.
Goodness me. Can they open their mouth and talk? You know what I mean? So if they're making announcements, let them make announcements to fix the announcers. Thank you. There we go.
Yes, indeed.
Well, everyone, grab your cuppa and join us so that we can, ginger you, like those folks in Rivers State. I didn't call names, please, nobody should call me. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you once again for joining us for a Sunday edition here for Breakfast Extra. Sad story about the fire going on at Christ Embassy. That's on Oregu, if I'm not mistaken. We're hoping that the agencies are all on their way there. And please, like Judith said from earlier, if you are on the way and you see these agencies trying to get there, please give them way so they can get there and do their jobs. And we hope that they have the situation under control. Yeah, very fire intro there you gave to us for our prologue.
I do my best, Joe.
Girl, some things I didn't want to repeat, but she said it and we're going to stick to it. In any case, on today's show, we will be examining Nigeria's economic reforms, the dwindling investment by foreign venture capitals in Nigeria's tech startup, and address the alarming food insecurity in the country and its impact on food prices. We'll also touch on security as Nigeria and Turkey's influence grows in the Sahel. And on our Wellness Center, we will be commemorating World Sickle Cell Day. But first, let's bring you the front pages of the dailies this morning from Nigeria and some parts of Africa. And we're starting this morning from The Guardian newspaper. If you have a copy or if you're going to see a copy of The Guardian newspaper this morning, these are the headlines that will meet you. Starting up, significant heroes of June 12, President Tinubu ignored on Democracy Day. At the top for The Guardian, my administration has laid solid instructional foundations that will make governance easy in Oyo, says Makinde, and rethinking local business in the e-commerce era. Then we're going to touch a little bit on that one today, exactly how this is possible. And Atiku meets Buhari, MES PDP stakeholders in Katsina. An absence of refinery forex crisis pushed spending on engine oil to 3.7 trillion naira yearly. NEL Fund approves 35 billion naira students loan for 124 federal universities, our institutions, and World Sickle Cell Day Foundation seeks stakeholder support for carriers. Heroes of democracy are in South Africa. That one you'll find on the back page. I think we successfully covered all the headlines for The Guardian newspaper. What do we have next, Judith?
Oh, yes, indeed. We have The Nation next. And the very first headline that comes at you: cholera spreads to 31 states, claims 34 lives. Outbreak not abating, suspected cases now 1,283. NCDC activates Emergency Operations Center. Anxiety as states ramp up measures to stem spread. At the very top there, Tinubu okays 35 billion naira for student loan scheme takeoff. NAF Fund approves 70,000 applications. You can find that story on page 6. And right next to it, court orders final forfeiture of 12.18 billion naira properties linked to Emefiele. And that story is on page 2. At the bottom there, EFCC arrest 2 ex-bankers for stealing dead customers 4.2 million naira. That story is on page 7. Right next to it, Emirates Torso Kano insist on demolishing Bayaro's mini palace. And that story is on page 8, if I'm correct there. That no, yeah, 6. There we go. It's on 6. He was never MES governor's spokesman. And right next to it, inflation dips for a 3rd consecutive month. CBN Bank says NBS data shows its policy measures working. That story is on page 2.
And we move on now to the Punch newspaper, if I may. Thank you very much, Judith. Sunday Punch newspaper has these as headlines. The first big one: FG spends 14.77 billion naira on presidential jets in 11 months. State House reports. Aren't we selling 3 of those? Is that why they're selling them? Perhaps costing us too much. But then there's also talk about getting another one. We sell 3, get 1. I'm guessing. Payments made in 11 tranches between July 2023 and May 2024. Aviation experts disagree on FG's investment in new planes. There you go, page 3. Going to make an exciting read this morning for a Sunday. At the very top for the Punch: cholera, Lassa fever killed 202 in 6 months, says the NCDC. FG plans relocation of Agodi, Ikoyi, Enugu, 23 other prisons. And Tinubu should take restructuring Nigeria seriously, says ex-Afenifere Secretary Okoromo. And Ogun PDP wooing Daniel Amosun, others say chairman, and having more than one wife is part of my Yoruba culture. octogenarian evangelist. Yes, he's an octogenarian and an evangelist. Maybe you should listen to him. He's an African man. There's more. There's more. Multi-million public assets under attack as vandals plundered bridge railings, steal power cables and others. I've seen this happen before. Driving in traffic, and then there's this lad just by my side who's unscrewing the bridge railing with a spoon. I was wondering exactly what he was doing. I first thought he was doing open defecating, but he wasn't. He was actually meticulously unscrewing these huge bolts with a spoon. And then after driving forward a bit, I see him walk away with a pole. And I'm like, that's what he was doing. Crazy situation. And finally, for the punch, Nigeria loses 636 billion naira as oil production dips on page 5. If you're interested, grab a copy of the Sunday Punch for this morning.
Speaking of which, I need to do a PSA very quickly. If you are driving from Costain to get to Ojuelegba via the Costain Bridge, the Ojuelegba Bridge, that's the Stadium Bridge, I beg your pardon. There's a trailer that fell off the bridge there. Just not really fell off the bridge, but it turned over on the bridge and it's carrying fuel. Now, I don't know if it's a diesel or petrol, but it fell over. So it tipped over and it's spilling over. And it, you know, kind of dented the side of the bridge. Because when you're talking about railings, I just remembered. So please, if you're driving towards there, you're going to experience a bit of traffic. I already saw officials that were gathered there as well. Emergency response persons were there. We could hear sirens as I was heading to the office. So just be mindful, okay?
Thank you for that PSA.
Let's move on now to Sunday Monitor all the way in Kenya. We're moving towards the outside of the borders there to Kenya. The very first story that jumps at you, Kenya blocks milk from Uganda again.
Not the milk.
Lost opportunities, more than 100 failed export permits later. 200 jobs lost with its milk production halved. Brookside Dairies has warned that a trade tiff between Uganda and Kenya could annually cost the former shillings 10 billion shillings in milk exports. That story is on page 5 there. Right next to it there, or rather at the bottom there, sizing up health of local lenders. That story there, it says economy in a spot of bother. All right, it's just looking at the economy. Look, all of the protest that is going on the streets of Kenya, I'm sure that's what is at the bottom. They're just taking a look at their local economies and everything else in between. By the way, on our Focus Africa today, we will be having a look into the protest that is unfolding on the streets in Kenya. But that's it, what we can take for the dailies, okay, right here on Breakfast Xtra. But keep it locked on here to Breakfast Xtra, because coming up this hour, we take a critical look into Nigeria's economic reforms and its influence on the nation's economy, as well as the economic sector and stability, which is what we're all hoping for. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break.
Welcome back. Breakfast Extra here for a Sunday edition. On our first big story, we take a critical look at the Nigerian economy. The rosy picture painted by senior government officials are now being replaced by harsh realities, as reflected in the economic report from the National Bureau of Statistics. Nigeria's economy is currently at a breaking point. Multinational companies are leaving, local businesses are struggling, and job losses are mounting.
Now, the economy's frail health is evident in various sectors, and this downturn didn't happen overnight. It is a result of years of inconsistent policies, security challenges, soaring inflation, and rising poverty levels. And so to discuss these pressing issues and potential solutions, we have with us today on the show Onome Ohuworiole. He's a senior analyst, Money Africa. We also have with us, joining us via video chat, Oluseun Onugbeide. He's the director of budget. A very good morning to you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Good morning. It's a pleasure. Very much. Thank you.
So I'm going to throw this question out to the both of you, gentlemen, right? And I'm going to start with Oluseun, because he's been, just been patient with us on video chat. So, given the current economic challenges in Nigeria, including the exodus of multinational companies and the struggles of local businesses as well, how did we reach this breaking point?
And I think you made the point clearly that this is a product of years of poor investments in the economy. We also have not applied long-term thinking in how we deal with issues of the economy, and how we build productivity as a country. Over the years, we had an oil industry that we treated like with rentier mindset. So we only extracted. We didn't do our best to secure the environment. We didn't do our best to even attract new investments in that space. We also did not look at how big our non-oil sector can be. What other thing else would we sell to the world apart from oil? Over the years, everybody just keep looking for a shortcut into the answers. And for when revenues dipped, the previous government, and even including this current government, they went to the CBN and took overdraft they are not backed by any level of assets. So that is where we are, weak productivity over the years, poor long-term thinking, and lack of fiscal discipline. When you put all of those three things together, you are going to just get the kind of outcomes that we have at this point.
Now, Onome, I'm going to come to you next, right? He just talked about policy inconsistencies being highlighted as one of the major issues. Can you elaborate a bit on this, inconsistencies that has affected investor confidence just over the years?
Okay, so, I think I'd take a slightly different approach. If you're going to summarize the issues, the challenges, I would say we've run away from hard decisions as a country. And unfortunately, we're in a position where we have to take all the hard decisions at once. So if you look at subsidy, we removed the subsidy, right? And this administration came in on board. Your subsidy is back. It's back because your exchange rate has moved. We haven't addressed if we're going to keep it, how we're keeping it, how is the NNPC keeping it. So those are things that we need to address. So you can just look at the subsidy alone. That's the biggest pressure point we're facing. And unfortunately, we haven't had the administration come out to say, look, here's what happened, here's our goal. We've had to shift the post. Here's what we need to do. But that's just a clear example of the Nigerian thing. So we have a goal, we work towards the goal, we miss the goal, and we just say, let's push it down, and let's push it down, and let's push it down until you can't take the pressure anymore.
Let me come to Mr. Oluwaseun. Mr. Oluwaseun, now the current administration has proposed several reforms, including tax reforms aimed at reducing the burden on businesses. How do you think that this is going to affect businesses? Is this the right move, or is there more that could be done by the administration?
We're yet to see the full draft, but I've been part of the consultation, and I've had some side conversations with the presidential advisor on the tax reform or the fiscal reform committee. And I think a lot of the things being said make sense. They want to bring down the CIT, in my own view, which makes sense. They also want to ensure that those within a certain cadre, with a certain income band or revenue band, do not pay VAT, which also makes a lot of sense. But that means that there will be pressure on a certain band of income, which means there will be an increase in the VAT rate for a certain band. I guess that would definitely now be the point of contestation, because nobody wants to pay additional taxes. But what we need, and I think my feedback is that we are poor. Our ability to collect data and to be effective at it is very, very poor. So even if all of these ideas sounds great on paper, how are we ensuring that people are able to understand those who don't want to game the system, those who have the right revenue? How do we give enough sensitization? Some people even know how to do impute VAT, how to be able to get VAT refunds, how the FRS is sensitized on those things, especially at I won't say the SME level, but the medium level, the SME levels, where are definitely going to still be affected by this new VAT rate. So I feel like it looks well thought, but there's a whole lot of sensitization and conversation that needs to happen. All of states will also have to kick in into this, because some of them are pushing back They have to see clearly that this all is in the best of the economy. What we need is to enhance productivity. I'm big on also raising taxes, raising revenue, but without fiscal discipline, and we have even enhancing local productivity effectively. We can't just we are trying to tax nothing or taxing wrongly. So I believe as we're also thinking of fiscal reform and taxes, we're also being big on how do we get this Nigerian economy to be productive? How do we deepen the private sector? And most importantly, also how when the money comes to the hand of the government, how are they much more disciplined about the use of those funds? Yeah.
Okay, so Olusegun, now I heard you talk about fiscal reform and all of that. Now these tax amendments that are being thought, or reforms that are being thought, are they the main perhaps maybe the main course of action that should be taken? Are there other, for instance, you talk about taxes, however, there are so many agencies that businesses have to tend to, dues for this, dues for that, so much more that when you look at everything accumulatively, you're paying so much, even with the reforms enacted. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so ideally, I've spoken to him a few times, and he's been big on the fact that multiple taxation is a huge burden for every entrepreneur of every businesses. So I expect that in the report, that in whatever will be brought forward, it will be clear how they're going to reduce, the number of taxes. I know there was a time they muted that the FIRS should take all taxes, and I think there was a huge pushback from MDs and agencies from that. I expect that the paper that would come out would mean that they streamline the number of taxes being collected. But there are other bigger things to be done. I mean, I'm big on fiscal discipline and accountability, and the government taking a much more decent approach into use of public revenues. Because even if you raise 150 trillion and 20 trillion today, without the right fiscal discipline, you cannot get the kind of results that you want. You would keep having poor capital efficiency, you keep spending in the wrong way. National Assembly member will keep, imputing a constituency project into trillions of naira in there. It will not serve any form of planning purpose. And that's why I said in my beginning that we have a planning problem. We're not a country that plans. You can't tell me this is what Nigeria will be in the next 5, 10, 20 years. It looks like we just big things on the go. Subsidy was there for years. At the point it didn't make sense. At the point everybody had consensus that, okay, we have to now let it go. But for years, nobody wanted to do it. Now we have done it with exchange rate devaluation. And at the end of the day, we are now figuring out that, oh, wow, this is going to even spike subsidy much more, because definitely you will need even much more naira to be able to procure the goods. So we are more dollars to procure the goods. So we are in that situation where it's really challenging on the side of the government, but they also have to deal with people in trust and ensure that the use of public resources carry the whole of discipline. I think I want to be big on that. Yeah.
Right. Let me come to you, Nome, and ask this question. Now, with all of this economic reforms that we've seen, from the removal of subsidy to the floating of the naira, unification of the foreign exchange, what has happened, over time is, exacerbated inflation rate, heightened inflation rate, and, by extension, inflationary cost of living in terms of, food prices and the rest. And this is now hampered on the average Nigerian's purchasing power. And now with the NLC and organized labor clamoring for an increase in minimum wage, do you see this in aiding, when it comes to increasing the purchasing power of the average Nigerian, or better yet, help to curb subsidy or inflation, I beg your pardon, in some way?
I mean, I think on the contrary, it's going to increase it, but in a way, the government is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. So because of the sharp inflation we've had, that minimum wage needs to go up. But the challenge is, if you increase the minimum wage, and you're going to see some pushback from the states, many states in the country can't pay a new or any of the proposed figures we're hearing for the minimum wage. The states can't pay it. The states are going to say, look, we need the subsidy off. Now, you remove the subsidy, you increase the minimum wage, you're back at square one because prices then go up. So really, it's a case of you just have no choice but to swallow all the bitter pills all at once, because let's be real, 30,000 naira can't give a decent life anywhere in this country as of today. Anywhere. So what do? So you have no choice but to raise the minimum wage.
Some would argue also 62 naira can't, it can't be it can be even substantial
I totally agree, because what's the cost of a decent meal a day? Let's say maybe 1,000, 1,500. Take a family of 5, multiply it by 30. What do you have? Pushing over 100,000. That's just food. We've not talked of healthcare. We've not talked of accommodation. We've not talked of education. So reality is, yes, you can argue that, but I'm of the opinion that take all the bitter pills once and then pick what you... right now, we're just going to have to live with the high inflation. When you look at all the issues that you have to deal with, which is the easiest issue to solve. But interestingly, what's driving inflation is food prices. And why is food expensive? It's a combination of reasons. You have security issues, you have the higher exchange rates, you have the fact that farmers can't produce, you even have the fact that cost of transportation, the bottlenecks and all that. So some things can be fixed quickly, some things are going to take time to fix, but you just have to live with it.
Let me come to Olusegun. Now, Mr. Olusegun, you're the DG for budget, and you guys have tracked Nigeria's budget for the past many years, especially as where these monies go. Let's take a look at agriculture, for instance. Is Nigeria doing enough when it comes to agriculture? Later today, we'll be talking about food crisis in Nigeria, the food insecurity in Nigeria. Is the government doing enough? Are they putting enough money where it should be spent? For instance, agriculture. I have a follow-up question to that, but please, can you answer that first?
Thanks so much. We're not doing enough. And I think that's one of the key issues where that the government needs to address quickly. To remove fuel subsidy, you should have done some few things right. Part of that is the minimum wage. The part of that is also the food security and food inflation. Food inflation didn't start in this current administration. It's been bubbling since the previous administration. It's been because if you look at Nigeria's inflation matrix, food is the biggest component in that. So we have food inflation has been there. So if you are going to remove fuel subsidy, at least I would think of the government should have thought of 3 things. One is, what is my way to tackle food inflation? Secondly, how do I ease move of transportation? And third one is the minimum wage. At least you want to have clear direction, not a year after when you have made a pronouncement. We're still going back and forth on all of these things. We don't have full answers, clear-cut answers about those 3 issues. And that's why, even people know, everyone has known this, that the removal of fuel subsidy is going to have a significant inflationary impact on the citizens, because also general price level in the economy is going to rise. But, how do you now forecast and how do you think through those situations? We have not done that. And that's one of these you see with agriculture. If you look at the agricultural budget, it's a disaster. Because you see, when you are expected that policy, should drive its use of public resources, it's not what you get to see. Say agricultural ministry constructing solar panel, agricultural ministry is trying to build a solar pump water in urban areas that have no business with. Those are the situations you find. The agency, Ministry of Agriculture, maybe because it's been led by a former legislator, has the biggest insertions by the National Assembly for constituency projects, for things that mostly don't have nothing to do with agriculture. And that's the same thing we have been saying over the years. There's no fiscal discipline in this government. Nobody's holding the line to say, this is what our plan is, and this is how we're going to stay true to our plan end to end. And that's why we can't get the results we want.
So, Olusegun, you're saying that the agricultural ministry has no focus. But how do you suggest that Nigeria could, for instance, focus on agriculture by getting people into the farms, making the capitals of most states less attractive, making policies attractive for farming and farmers? What do you suggest so that we can get more food and more jobs would be created as well? What's your suggestion on that?
My suggestion, I would say 3 things. Look at the input subsidy. So a lot of things I've heard is the cost of fertilizer has significantly rose in recent years. So you have to look at input subsidy in some sort of way. So give cheaper, easy to access fertilizers for those who want to embark on agriculture, especially food production. The second thing is also look at travel logistics. That is a major component. And in some way, the government has needed a youth task force. If something is being produced at 150 naira per kilo in maybe Plateau State, how do you ensure that within a reasonable margin, it gets to a market in an urban area? So that's something second that you have to build up also. And then the third thing, in my own view, is also security. You need to figure out a way to protect farmers and allow them to be able to farm in a much more secure environment. And I think a bigger thing to this is to have greater diversity. I mean, to have some resilience across the country. There's too much concentration of agricultural production. The burden is put significantly on a region of the country. And I think it's also time that the government will look at that from a policy perspective, that our food production centers should be well distributed across the country. And I think that's something that the government also needs to do. It doesn't mean that they don't solve the insecurity issues or they don't fix, because I mean, if the northern part, especially the north-central part, is the food basket of this country, it doesn't mean that the poverty issues have been resolved by those significant food production. It just means that it's still been in a productive way. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I hate to cut you, but we've run out of time. I would have even loved for us to touch a bit more on the mass exodus of Nigerian professionals as well as the multinationals and what it would mean in terms of sending messages to investors outside the country. I think that's another conversation we can have for another time. But Olusegun and Onome, many thanks for coming on. We appreciate you for doing this with us, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Olusegun Onigbende, he is the country director for budget, as well as Onome Ohuworiole. He is a senior analyst at Money Africa, and they both gentlemen join us today to just examine Nigerian policy reforms when it comes to our economy. Now, coming up next, we are going to be talking about the dwindling venture capital investment in Nigeria's tech startups. There's more on this after the break. Join us again.
And you're welcome to our special this weekend, which focuses on Nigeria's dynamic startup ecosystem. Over the past decade, Nigeria has become the poster child for African innovation, producing 4 of the 7 unicorns on the continent and attracting over $2 billion in venture capital between 2015 and 2022.
However, 2023 has seen a significant shift from 2023. Nigerian startups, which once led the continent in funding, have fallen behind Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa. So let's look into the factors behind this decline and explore the future of venture capital investment in Nigeria. And so joining us in the studio to provide insights is Ayobamigbe Teriba. He's a program lead for VC4A. And Ayobamigbe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's get started. I would like for you to, just start with the big picture for us, right? Nigeria has been a leader in the African startups, right, as the scene for years. So can you help us summarize, what made Nigeria such an attractive destination for venture capital investments up until recently?
So the first thing to note is Nigeria is the giant of Africa, but we go with the name tag. And as of today, Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa and the most populous black nation in the world. Something to know about Nigeria that makes it dynamic is first, the population is quite a number to attract people, because we always believe that you create consumer markets and it's built on population size. Something to also note is the median age in Nigeria is about 18, in Europe is about 53. So you are seeing that a lot of the continents we really look forward to are growing old, and so sad they are not replicating fast enough. A lot of them, if you look at the G7 summit, they had conversation about reproduction, and even the Pope was leading a charge that everybody should reproduce, which is quite an interesting thing. But you also would see that in Africa, you have got like a very large expanse of arable land. I was listening to the president of the African Investment Bank speaking, where he was talking about the fact that Africa is currently housing about 30 to 40% of the arable lands across the world. And the last one to think through, which is quite important, is 1 in every 3 humans on Earth by year 2050 will be an African. So all these metrics now comes back to Nigeria, which is expected to be about 400 million people by 2050. So when you look at all these numbers, and I tell you, I'm building something to cater to these markets, obviously that turns your eyes, right? And that's where you begin to see Nigeria playing that part and being very attractive to international investors who are saying, as we continuously look for where to deploy capital, because venture capital is an asset class. It's just the way you look at stocks, you look at equities, you look at buying lands, you look at other ways of investment. Venture capital is also a point where it's mass risk, mass reward, which is you put money into a tech, like this tab you have. That's a hardware, but everything you're looking around from different things in the studio is software. So when you think that you can sell that to a huge number of people and they could grow into consuming it, yeah, that's a big number, and that's what Nigeria's pushing.
So obviously, as we develop, we have a big appetite for tech and software and all of that, and that made us attractive. Are we still attractive? Are we still the giant? Would you call Nigeria the giant after Egypt and Kenya? Startups actually made more than Nigeria only made $575 million last year. Egypt and Kenya, I think, even South Africa made more than we did. So what gives?
I mean, I'm sorry for the way it looks today.
You don't have to, it's not your fault.
I mean, it's not my fault, but the truth is also, we also need to, a little bit of going to, talking about the truth of today, in fact, that people at home actually feel the brunt a lot more. And now look into the GDP. Nigeria is currently going through shrinkflation, which means that we used to be the biggest GDP in Africa, and we are currently 4th in the world. And if you look at that, it also sends numbers and shivers to everybody, even people investing their money, to say, why should I come to Nigeria when Algeria is currently the 2nd or the 3rd biggest economy in Africa? Why should I come to Nigeria when Egypt, is quite bigger than Nigeria? So again, the numbers don't look too good at the moment, but I would always tell you that because of our population, we just need to get our policies right. And this thing is about choices. Everybody is building different things. Investors just must believe that this is the market where they should make the bet on. So I think it looks up, it looks bright, even though the way it looks today, you can't for anything take away our population, right? And that's an important thing to think about.
I'm so glad you just talked about population, because which takes us to our next question, right? Whether we like it or not, the demography still shows that we're by far the most populated country at this side of the world, this continent, right? And so with that in mind, does this demographic advantage that we have still offer potential for future investors? Yes, it does, because like I did mention to you, today Asia is the hotbed of, the big tech jostling into be there. Apple is opening new flagship stores there. Microsoft is investing in AI there. India is the biggest. India is the most populous country on earth. China is 2nd biggest population on earth. All this metric is a today's metric. And you could see that that's where everybody's playing this push and pull to be active. Africa is that for the future. The sad thing about consumer markets is sometimes you need to wait it out. And that's why you look at even the actuals of what's happening now, where you're finding some big corporations pull out, but some big corporations say rather than pull out, we would change our supply lines. We would change our supply chain. We would rather produce with local productions rather than actually continuously import, because the numbers for Nigeria don't make sense for importation. So again, it's you building consumer markets, and I kind of want to, quote Tokbalawani, the CEO of Ilios, and he says, while the consumer might be struggling on affordability, you can't bet against their consumption. All right, I'm going to pause you on that one, Terry. But we will come back to this, because there's so much that needs to be discussed regarding the population that you talked about. But we're getting information that we have breaking news right now. So we're going to go right to our correspondent. It's about the Christ Embassy fire that's currently going on in Oregun. And we can see visuals there. I thought it was a small fire, but apparently this is escalating. We're hoping that the emergency services are there already. I'm wondering if these are worshippers, perhaps. We have no idea how the fire started. Well, thank goodness we can see that the fire agency are there. However, we hope that this gets put under control, and hope that people do not get in the way of the agencies, please. We're going to short break now. When we get back, we'll carry on with this information, this breaking news, and also the discussion that we were talking about from before.
Welcome back. We're still talking about the fire that's happening right now at the Christ Embassy quarters. We're hoping that it's under control. We just saw visuals there of the fire agency rolling in. We're hoping that this will be brought under control soon. We're also trying to get our correspondents on ground, and that's what's causing the delay, so that they can tell us exactly what the situation is at Christ Embassy Church, which has just been engulfed by fire, is on fire, as we can see right now with the bellowing smoke.
We don't know who the people there are, but we're guessing it could be attendees of the church as well as residents around the area. As you can see from the visuals, there are people outside, and you can see the fire truck pulling into the premises. We also do understand that we do not know the cause of the fire at this time. We cannot tell if this complex is just only the church or if there are other occupants of that building besides from the church. We do know that this is the Christ Embassy Church at Oregun, but we cannot tell at this time. Now, if you find yourself around the premises of that area or you know where this place is, please make sure to make way for the fire trucks and all the first responders as they get there. Would also advise that you don't stand too close to the building and make sure to put a safe distance between yourself and the building as well. As we come back into the studio to continue our conversation with our guest, which is Ayo Bamigbe Taribe. He is the program lead VC for A. And we're pretty much out of time. But before we go, I wanted you to just talk about, for startups, very, very quickly, because we're pressed for time. In these challenging times that Nigerian startups have found themselves, what is your outlook, for Nigerian startups, and what do they need to do to attract investors, and how can venture capital firms help, in a sort of a synergy to improve investments?
Summarily,
for
please.
Nigeria.
Yeah. So the first thing to note is it's quite a tough time, and I think the best way to overcome a tough time is accepting it's a tough time, and then building things that again are more like emergency use cases for people. President Obasanjo said something where he said that I could wear my father's clothes, but I can't eat my father's food because, I have to eat my own food. And that means things like, production of like food, necessities and stuff is there. But again, our population is not going to shrink overnight. So we still need to continuously build businesses on great unit economics and definitely collaborating more to be able to enable us succeed.
Oh, thank you very much. We're going to come back to this. There's still so much that we need to ask and we need to know, actually. But let's move over now because we have Adebola Adeduba on for the news this morning. Thank you very much. Adebola, what's that, Adebola? Well, great. It's all good.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Good morning, Mazino.
Good morning. Don't worry, it's okay. It happens. It's live TV.
Yes, it is.
Take us into the news, please. Thank you.
Yes, let's begin by telling you that an early morning fire at Christ Embassy Church, Ikeja, Lagos, reportedly destroyed property worth millions of naira. The fire incident was not the first to be recorded at the Nigerian headquarters of the church. It should be recalled that another fire incident occurred in the church in March 2014, which razed generator houses, damaged about 10 generators. The Lagos State Fire Service fire trucks from the Alausa station were seen at the site of the incident. Now, no casualties have been reported so far. And on to security matters. Suspected bandits have kidnapped the parish priest of St. Raymond Catholic Church, Damba, Gusau, Zamfara State, Reverend Father Mika Suleiman. The spokesperson of Zamfara State Police Command, Yadzi Abubakar, said the priest was kidnapped on Saturday at his residence in the Damba area of Gusau. He notes that the incident was not reported to the police, but the command has deployed a police tactical squad to trail the kidnappers and ensure his safe return. And still talking security matters, news just filtering in tells a top traditional title holder, Mother King of the Shabu community in Lafia local government area of Nasarawa State, Musa Shuaibu, has been kidnapped by gunmen. The gunmen were said to have invaded the area and whisked him away to an unknown destination. Shuaibu was kidnapped a few meters away from his residence after observing the Muslim dusk prayer in the mosque area. Confirming the incident, the police public relations officer in the state, Rahman Nansel, said officers of the command have been deployed to the area to ensure that the chief regains freedom and to arrest the criminal elements. And moving on to another story, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria has threatened to shut down all petrol stations in Adamawa and Taraba State over alleged harassment by the members of the Nigeria Customs Service. The secretary of the association in Adamawa State made this known to newsmen, accusing the customs anti-smuggling unit, code-named Operation Whirlwind, of abandoning their duties at the border areas and targeting legitimate businesses.
When product is deliberated, it simply means the product are free market without any government interference. On this regards, we are calling on the attention of His Excellency, Governor Ahmed Umaru Fintiri, the People Governor, being the Chief Security Officer of the state, to step in as the matter of agency and of public interest to do the needful by calling the men of the Nigerian Customs Service to order, so as to quench the escalation that may probably lead to industrial actions by all the stakeholders of petroleum product, which are IMAN, NATO, and all branches of NUPEN, which include PTD, IND, PSW, ELD, and SUTACAT, etc., and all other in the business of supplying and distribution of petroleum product in the state. Lastly, as from Monday, the 25th of June 2024, if our prayers were not answered or addressed, we will not hesitate to unanimously withdraw our services of supplies and distribution of petroleum in the entire states of Adamawa and Taraba states.
A federal high court in Lagos has ordered the permanent forfeiture of properties valued at over 11.14 billion naira and another 1.04 billion naira linked to former Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Godwin Emefiele. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission had filed an application for the forfeiture, alleging that the properties were purchased with proceeds of fraud. The court had earlier granted a temporary forfeiture order in June 5th and has now made the forfeiture permanent. Let's now tell you that Senator Ahmed Aliyu Wada, the lawmaker representing Nasarawa West Zone, has urged President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to approve at least 150,000 naira as the new minimum wage. Wada made this known in an interview with newsmen in Kefi local government area of Nasarawa State. The lawmaker notes that the current realities of the Nigerian economy informed his decision to propose the figure, which will go a long way in alleviating the hardship faced by the workers. Authorities in Togo have lifted a suspension on accreditation for foreign journalists imposed in April after a highly contested constitutional reform. The High Authority for Audiovisual and Communication had suspended the accreditations before legislative elections that saw President Faure Gnassingbe's ruling party extend his family's political dynasty. The agency cited serious failures in the coverage of Togo's politics by French media and issues with a French journalist who was expelled from Togo. In the east of the continent, the African Union has endorsed Somalia's plea to delay the withdrawal of troops combating Islamist militants and has called for a new international force to succeed the AU peacekeeping mission. Al-Shabaab, linked to Al-Qaeda, has been fighting the unstable central government in Mogadishu for over 17 years. UN resolutions require the African Union peacekeeping mission to reduce its forces zero by December 31st, transferring security to Somali army and police. Initially, 4,000 of 13,500 troops will depart by the end of June. However, after Somalia requested that only 2,000 troops leave in June and the remaining 2,000 in September, the AU Peace and Security Council expressed strong support for a phased pullout. And still in the east of Africa, campaigning opened on Saturday for Rwanda's July 15th presidential election, with President Paul Kagame widely expected to extend his 24-year iron fist rule over the Great Lakes of the nation. 9 million Rwandans are registered to vote in the exercise to be held concurrently with legislative elections, a first in the country. The polls came 3 decades after the genocide, which claimed 800,000 lives. President since 2000, Kagame will face the same rivals as he did in 2017, the leader of the opposition Democratic Green Party, Frank Kebineza, and former journalist Philippe Mpayimana, who is running as an independent candidate. And up north, Mauritanian President Mohamed Chike El Ghazouani, who is running for a second term in the June 29 presidential election, is called on the other Sahelian states, 3 of which are military regimes, which have formed a new military alliance to fight collectively against jihadism.
Moi, je considère que la région doit dégager une volonté politique commune pour pouvoir lutter contre l'insécurité. Si le G5 Sahel n'est pas le bon, il faut trouver un autre G quelque chose. L'essentiel est que la menace est forte. Je ne suis pas de ceux qui pensent aujourd'hui que des pays peuvent faire face individuellement à une menace comme le terrorisme. Ailleurs, il a été prouvé que pour faire sérieusement de la lutte contre le terrorisme, contre l'insécurité, on a besoin de coaliser, on a besoin de créer des regroupements pour justement combattre le terrorisme ensemble. Donc, en attendant tout cela.
And that's a wrap on Breakfast Headlines. I am Adebola Adeduba. It's back to Judith and Mazino.
Well, Adebola, many thanks. I appreciate you. And don't mind Mazino for putting you on the spot.
Do it again. That's going to be your thing from now. I won't leave it down. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Right.
And now it's back into the studio with our guest from earlier. Yes. That's Ayobamigbe Teriba. He is the program lead VC4A. And we'll be talking about the dwindling venture capital investments in Nigerian startups, which is declined since 2023. We've seen a significant decline starting from 2022.
I've got a question.
Please.
You talk about population being an asset for countries like India and Asia, but exactly how is it an asset? Because if we're the most populous Black African nation, then we can use that to our advantage. Are we capable? How, in definitive terms, can we use our population? Is it by taxing the populace or putting them to work? Which is kind of like slavery, but you explain.
So the first thing to know is population is a strength if used appropriately. Countries in the world like Brazil, Indonesia, India, the US, actually ride on their population. But there's something that works with population, productivity and earning capacity. What we are battling with in Nigeria is majority of our population live below poverty lines. So as it is today, it is becoming more of a burden than an asset. But in the net scope of it, population is where you build consumers on. So for us, we actually have the opportunity, but sadly, our policies as a government, both fiscal and in last year's monetary, have not been able to build that earning capacity for people to be able to afford technological products, which most times comes between the needs and the wants, right?
I'm trying to get this real clear.
Yeah.
Now, how does Asia do it? India, I know, well, many countries, especially tech countries, outsource their especially customer care to Indian companies.
Yes.
Is this what you're talking about?
No. So what I'm talking about is first, you speak English.
Yes, I do.
The biggest markets in the world are English-speaking markets, except China, which is second. The US is English, the UK is English, Canada is English, and G7 countries, right? If you have about 4 in G7 speaking English, that means that you can be able to provide services to them. Second of all, your age, the age of your population. The median age in Nigeria is 18, as I had mentioned. In Africa, it's 18. It is 53 in Europe, which means that you will do more productive things because you're in your prime to do them. So when you're talking about how does your population count for you, first, your time zone too. Your time zone is in a favorable time zone, which means you wake up in the time where majority of the world is awake. Europe, and even sometimes you could actually also work with the Eastern time in the US or other kind of time zones, which means you can offer service. And we've thought through this. I currently live in Nigeria or work for an international organization in Holland. VC4 is an Holland-based organization. And I resume daily like I'm working in the bank, right? That means that I wake up, provide productive hours to Europe, and then I get paid for those productive hours, which means that I am a net contributor to Nigerians' foreign exchange because there is value for money. If we could get a lot more people, we started with the developer community where a lot more developers are working in US companies, UK companies, and that means that people could export. I'll give you a stat. Do you know that Nigeria's third trading partner when it comes to exchange of value is actually Ghana and Cameroon? Its first is the UK, second is the US. That's where our remittances mostly come from. But actually, Nigeria with our population should be exporting value to Europe, should be exporting value to Asia, should be exporting value to all those countries. But where are they taking it to? They're taking it to India because first, it's not just about age, there's education. That's the sophistication of, the knowledge you have. There is also the fact where people are technologically advanced. And look at it, India is at the point where the world goes to them now to have conversations about building AI, AI infrastructure, building, technology tools and all those things. And that's how you put your population to work.
You are the program lead for VC4A.
Yes.
Which means that you are at the forefront looking at startups and watching the trends. Yeah. What is your forecast for Nigerian startups in the next, say, 5 years?
So the thing about Nigeria is I'm bullish on Nigeria, right? And it's not maybe the best time to have those forecasts, but I would say first is we are at the prime stage where we can definitely build on the collective knowledge that is beaming out of here. First, you've got a lot of people going into technology institutions and also going into universities. That means that more people are coming out with the understanding of things that people need, and they are building it. Second of all, I think you need to look at innovation from a point where it's digital entrepreneurship. People are actually doing a lot more entrepreneurship these days, and it means that people are taking the guard to say there are problems there, I want to solve it. The more we cannot just build for Nigeria, but build for consumption across even West Africa, and even the countries you mentioned, like South Africa and Kenya, and other kind of emerging markets, if you think about like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, the more we can be able to use technology as another exchange for foreign income. And if you think through it, let's look at the biggest contributors to Nigerians' GDP. Oil is dwindling, services is going up, which means that if we provide not just service but value-adding services, we could make a good foreign exchange from there. The last stat to drop with you is that it took, the stats about infrastructure. In 2005, it took 200 people to have access to landlines. In 2022, currently about 85% of people have access to cell devices and internet connection. So that's how we build our economy, and that's how we scale it up.
What about the ABCs of building the economy using your population? Wow, that's very nice.
And that was Ayobami Taribe. He is the program lead at VC4A, and we're talking about the dwindling investments in African, or rather Nigerian startups. Well, Ayobami, many thanks again.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to a great conversation next time.
Of course.
Cheers.
Well, we now switch gears now to bring you something very special. In fact, we have a special treat for you. Now, in the world of entertainment, few can claim the unique talent and skill of a ventriloquism.
It's a tough word.
It's a tough word.
Ventriloquism.
There we go. And today we'll bring you, one of Nigeria's finest. His name is Bariu Yusufu, and he's been captivating audiences with his incredible ability to bring puppets to life, combining humor, storytelling, and artistry in a way that leaves everyone in awe. So join us as we delve into the fascinating world of, say the word, Mazina.
Ventriloquism.
There we go. And get to know the man behind the puppets, Bariu. Take a look.
My name is Bariu. I am a ventriloquist, puppeteer, and comedian. My background and where it all started from. I trained as a medical doctor. I never performed publicly while I was in school. I guess part of it was I was always afraid of what my peers, my teachers would think. And also, I didn't think I had it in me. A few years after graduating, I started performing at comedy opening mics and hosting. I first started with strictly emceeing and stand-up comedy. But I wanted to do something different. I wanted to carve a niche for myself and do what other people were not doing. That's why I also dabbled into ventriloquism and working with puppets. Also, at a point in time, I was in a children's hospital working, and I discovered that children generally enjoy interacting with puppets. Children that are scared of hospitals, scared of needles and unfamiliar environments. I would have a little hand puppet that I would use to make them feel calm and at ease, and it worked for them. And it worked for me. So that provided me with an opportunity to try my hand at it on stage. And I went from there. I was always artistically inclined. I had the ability to make people laugh. School, playmates. I never thought much of it as a career because I could do so many other things. First instance, I remember early on in university, just cracking up my older sister. She laughed and said, "You should be a comedian." But this was way before stand-up comedy was even a thing in Nigeria. I didn't give it much thought. Then at a point in time in school, I brought out, I put socks in my hand and I was entertaining a friend of, it didn't go well because I didn't have the technique. But I'd always had that idea of, you know, being good in entertainment. Never actually considered making a career out of it until towards the end of my university, maybe when I had started working. And I saw the opportunities in it. I experienced it firsthand and the gratification it gave me. I never mentioned it to my parents or my family. Only my close friends knew about it. But even then, I wasn't considering it as a career. It was just something I liked doing. If I had to say that I wish I had done more, I'd done it in school. I went to a conservative medical school. In Ife, you just had to keep your nose clean, lay low, avoid being noticed, face your books, don't be known for anything outside of your book. So I tried as much as possible not to let people know that I had that other side of me. Funny enough, some of the people that I was hiding these things from, because I felt they would disapprove, was later on, long after, that I had friends, colleagues, lecturers then telling me, "Wow, you mean you could do this or you had this talent? Why didn't you do it then?" So if I'd known, maybe I would have pursued it earlier and I probably would have gone further. That time I wanted to do something about presidential aspirants and candidates, but I got some friendly advice from people in the know that don't mess around. That thing sort of discouraged me, you know, so I decided that to even drag myself up in front of the camera and start filming now became a chore. You know, it was no longer interesting. Some of the ideas that I had, because they were fairly radical and somewhat incendiary. See, man, if I put this thing out there, man, they'll feel jail you. No. So that was one of the reasons. So it sort of made me step down for a little bit. I found myself gravitating more towards live children's entertainment. Like, I've always done both. Do you understand? I do for children, do for adults. The material is different, the audience is different. What elicits a laugh out of both, the overlap is not that much. So when the possibility that props that I spent a lot of money on and things that I was going to introduce might not have worked out, not because it wasn't good, but because the powers that be, I got wind of that. I said, let me just go and do it. At least children are not going to go and throw you inside, they are not going to throw you inside one underground place because they don't like your jokes. So that was why I started, and I've always preferred live. The whole creating content, which is very good and in its own right, but I get the kick more out of doing in front of a live audience. So the whole
Still breaking news happening currently at the Christ Embassy Church in Oregon. We've been told that we have our correspondent on ground. Mr. Uzona Onoye is there and will be giving us exactly the situation of things that's happening this morning. Very unfortunate for a Sunday morning for the church to be in flames currently, but that's what's happening. And let's see if we can get our correspondent already. Mr. Uzona, are you there? Can you hear us? Yes, Mr. Ozana, can you please give us an idea of what's happening? Can you give us
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly.
Yes, please. Go ahead. Tell us what's happening.
Well, we got here about 15 minutes ago, and by the time we got here, we discovered that the church that was supposed to hold here had been diverted elsewhere. So all the church members that have been coming since then were told to head to somewhere else. But right now, what we have here, the truck behind me is the third truck that we saw, emptying its content, that is water, into the flame. As you can see over there, the flame is still there. I mean, the flame is still high up there inside the room. We cannot verify from where we are because we've been restricted from getting too close because of the likely danger. Nobody is quite sure the substances or whatever that is inside that flame, and so it could be of risk to get closer, and so we've been restricted to end here. But we can still see the flame and the smoke up there. That is all we know for now. But one more thing is that Christ Embassy Church in Oregon, that appears to be the headquarters where Christ Embassy started from, is on fire this morning, and that has affected several things in this neighborhood. We've seen heavy presence of policemen here. We've seen several of them, and they are trying to keep everything in check and in calm. And other emergency services across the other end of the area where we may be able to access later, but not now. We can see a lot of them, several vehicles of the firefighters and other emergency responders of the Lagos State government. That is what is happening here at the moment. The situation here is a bit tense because some church members who are still loitering around or walking around here are not sure what is happening next. We've seen some top officials of the church also come in and go. They walk in and walk out. That's what is going on right here at the moment.
Well, Ozona, I want to quickly ask: when did this fire? Were they able to notify you or tell you when the fire exactly started, the cause of the fire, or if anyone was caught in the fire?
Okay, those are little details that we will pick up right after now, because as I said, we arrived here not long ago, and we've tried to get the background information, but those other specific details we will pick up after this moment. But if you look up there, you will still see firefighters trying to assess that flame, wherever the source of the flame is coming from. That is what they are trying to do there. I wish I could get a bit closer to see. I would try because I may be walked back, but I'll still try to get a bit closer to see if I can find more details. I can get more details, but that's what is going on. The firefighters are actually doing a lot to stop the fire at the moment. If you see over there, you can see it for yourself over there. That is what is going on right now, but I can't go beyond this point. I've already been warned to stop. That's it. That's what's going on here.
Right. Ozona, you said that building serves as the headquarters for Christ Embassy in Lagos. So I'm curious, how large is this building we're looking at?
It's difficult to assess how large it is from this direction, from this angle, because I've looked this way, I couldn't see the end, and that way you can only see the front of the building, but it would be wrong to assume that that is where it ends, because it could have stretched over there. I will do that assessment. I'll go around, I'll really try to go around and get all of those details, but that is the much I can see. I can simply say that it is a huge, massive building, and that's all I can tell for now.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ozona. Please, we will be on standby to receive more information from the situation happening right now at Christ Embassy Church in Oregon. Thank you very much, Mr. Ozona.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Very sad that this should be happening on a Sunday when worshippers are actually, well, attempting to go to church. Very unfortunate. I'm wondering exactly what happened to the building. Was that caused by the firefighters? Did they have to break down the building? And how far has the fire gone inside of the building is another question. Look, if that's the third truck. Very unfortunate situation happening.
And that's
right
why
now.
I asked about the size of the building. Yeah. If that's the fifth or the third truck that's coming in, then how big is this building? And now that he says that it serves as one of the headquarters for Lagos, I can only imagine how massive it is. Now, we took a short break from our Creative Corner. We're going to continue with that conversation or that video. Take a look.
Career out of it until towards the end of my university, maybe when I had started working. And I saw the opportunities in it. I experienced it firsthand and the gratification it gave me. I never mentioned it to my parents or my family. Only my close friends knew about it. But even then, I wasn't considering it as a career. It was just something I liked doing. If I had to say that I wish I had done more, I'd done it in school. I went to a conservative medical school. In Ife, you just had to keep your nose clean, lay low, avoid being noticed. Face your books. Don't be known for anything outside of your books. So I tried as much as possible not to let people know that I had that other side of me. Funny enough, some of the people that I was hiding these things from because I felt they would disapprove was later on, long after, that I had friends, colleagues, lecturers then telling me, wow, you mean you could do this or you had this talent? Why did you do it then? So if I'd known, maybe I would have pursued it earlier. And I probably would have gone further. That time I wanted to do something about presidential aspirants and candidates, but I got some friendly advice from people in the know that don't mess around. That thing sort of discouraged me, you know, so I decided that to even drag myself up in front of the camera and start filming now became a chore. You know, it was no longer interesting. Some of the ideas that I had, because they were fairly radical and somewhat incendiary. See, man, if I put this thing out there, man, they feel jail you. No. So that was one of the reasons. So it sort of made me step down for a little bit. I found myself gravitating more towards live children's entertainment. Like, I've always done both. Do you understand? I do for children, do for adults. The material is different. The audience is different. What elicits a laugh out of both, the overlap is not that much. So when the possibility that props that I spent a lot of money on and things that I was going to introduce might not have worked out, not because it wasn't good, but because the powers that be, I got wind of that. I said, let me just go and do it. At least children are not going to go and throw you inside, they are not going to throw you inside one underground place because they don't like your jokes. So that was why I started, and I've always preferred live. The whole creating content, which is very good and in its own right, but I get the kick more out of doing in front of a live audience. So the whole in a way, my momentum dropped because of that for a while. I started making, the money came from ventriloquism. I wasn't known as a stand-up comedian. I hosted events, I did do a few comedy sets, but I didn't make a name for myself as a comedian. I made a name for myself as a ventriloquist. That was when I started making the money, performing on stage, using puppets. In fact, my puppet dog is more popular than me. A lot of people, and they say as a ventriloquist, your face people shouldn't really know you that well, because it's your puppets that are the medium that you express yourself. Ideally, you should be able to walk somewhere and people they have a hard time placing your face. But if they see the puppet, now that dog, that is the beauty of the whole thing, because you've made an inanimate object come alive and they forget you and they face the object. Some of my most hilarious interactions have been when people in the audience forget and just start facing the dog. Hey, you see this dog, eh? I go there, I go beat you. And the dog too will be saying, come out. You know if you do me anything, I go chop the dog. Oga, this is not a real dog. Nah lie, I go deal with her. No talk again, leave me with this your dog. Things like that, I find it, very, very, very fun and interesting, and I know I've really done a good job. I had performed in places, but that Nigeria's Got Talent thing, which is a long time ago, they even discontinued, but the semi-finals, a short clip that went viral, that particular one of Dog with Dan Foster, rest in peace, Yibo Kuku and Kate Henshaw, that particular clip, it went along with every audience has pros and cons. I'm an adult, so my contemporaries, to make them laugh in a way that does not insult their intelligence is very gratifying. Both. But one thing about an audience of children is that they are very honest and direct with you. They won't boo you, but there's no polite laughter to encourage you if you're having a bad day or if you are doing nonsense. Children are very, they will give you the benefit of the doubt for the first few seconds. And they watch. If you hold their attention, they'll play along with you. But if you do rubbish, nobody's going to stone you pure water or boo. They will just leave you and start doing something else. And you've lost them. Children, they will just start playing. But for adults, there's all that polite, let's encourage him. So in some cases, you might not really know you are doing a bad job. But they are both good. I enjoy family events. I enjoy children's events. I enjoy also the night club scene. Every one of them has its own fun and its own beauty. The evening one, you can discuss politics, societal issues. You can do it in a way that is a bit more abrasive than what you would do for a family event. They're all fun, they're all nice. Sometimes dead silence is worse when they are just looking at you. And you can feel them squirming in the audience. You are cringing, they are cringing even harder. Nowadays, if it's going bad, I just run through the set as quickly as possible and spare the audience the suffering of having to go through something bad. But most of the time, if I'm having a bad day, it's a technical issue. It is that either the microphone is not working or somebody, something usually audiovisual, or I'm too far from the audience and they can't really hear or get what I'm saying, or I'm in a bad position. So with time now, I've started picking and choosing where I perform and with whom I perform. Certain events I try and avoid. Now, like there are some places, the seating arrangements, all those things, and that's what comes with experience and with time. There's some things I had started initially that I'm going revamping. I've had like a career revamp with Dog now. There's this thing he used to do called 1 minute stories with Dog, where popular fairy tales he would just recite, give it his own spin, recite in pidgin, and give his own humorous twist. So we are changing it to 2 minutes with Dog. Then it used to be 1 minute because the Instagram limit was 1 minute. We'll make it 2 short video clips. Then I have a section for children's material where I work with Charlie the Chicken Teddy, and Monkey. A lot of the time, it's storytelling and then a little short sketch scenario with myself and then the chicken. Monkey is trying to do a revolution to take over so the animals can do. It's all, you see it. Then Baba has his own twist where he and I discuss politics, history. Baba has a section where he gives you a historical perspective on things that occur, because you find out that as we grow, a lot of us don't know history of Nigeria, West Africa. So Baba and I are going to do that. Then there's a health section where Baba gives a comedic education and information on things having to do with health. Then these are all little short videos that we have, we're going to be putting out there.
Good morning, Baba.
Good morning, Night King.
Thank you for hosting Breakfast Xtra in your house.
Oh, you are most welcome.
Baba, they've changed the national anthem. Do you know the one that they have changed the national anthem to now?
Mm-hmm. They say the national anthem. Oh, of course. God save the gracious Queen, long live the glorious. Not that one. No, not that one. Which one is this? The one after that. What? Yes. Oh, these people have gone again. Do you know how long it took me to learn the new one? They took it back. It's the middle one. Look, you people should make up your mind.
Baba, there was a strike action by NLC for minimum wage. What do you have to say about that?
Well, all I can say is that, you know what? What, Baba? Show them my party logo. Now? Well, Baba has, this is his party logo, and chop, I chop. With me, everybody go chop. We will eat the money together. That minimum wage is not enough. We need more money for everybody.
What do you have to say about the new electricity tariff? Is it affecting you? Are you a band A customer?
Yes, very much. I used to play in a band. Wait. And how much is it? What? These people go kill us. Oh. No light now for anybody. That's what they said now. You people. Baba, see some nice young ladies over there. Baba, I'm looking for a first lady. Oh. Are you not too old for that? I'm never too old for that kind of thing. Oh. Baba, you are too old. And they're asking, you say you want to be, this is the new political party. Yes. What's your position in this party? I am the youth leader. We, the youth of this nation, need a change. How old are you? None of your business. Okay, if you get to power, what will you do? 2027, if you get to power. When I get to power, the first thing I will do, yes, I will make sure, I will. Baba. Wait, you were sleeping. I think I sleep small now. Is it not my turn? But aren't you too old? The person we did here, am I older than him? Let us say the truth now. Yeah, hello, dog. Hey, I don't come again. Oh. So, I'd like to thank good people of Breakfast Xtra. Breakfast Xtra. Then get extra breakfast. No, Breakfast Xtra is the name of the show. Oh, so no food. Not exactly, no. So, dog, generally, you know, a lot of things have been going on in the country, and we would like to know your thoughts on minimum wage, inflation, and what? Are they teaching you now? How? Even human beings now, they don't follow me drag dog food. Are you serious? Yes, so I go here, they sell dog food. Now human beings, they queue for there. Wow. Oh boy, the hunger we in Nigeria now, eh? Is there anything different? Are they fear to work out now? Why? The way those security, they look me, eh? How? They fit carry me go choto. Hunger. So what do you think the government should do? I don't know. I'm a dog. Why are you asking me? Go and ask them. Did you vote for me? I know, as breakfast said, I think. Need I no carry me go kiri. I support the government. I'm a dog. And that's a dog. Hope that was.
Welcome back, and we have our next big story on food insecurity. But before that, we brought you some breaking news from earlier from the Oregun branch of the Christ Embassy Church, which is currently under fire. And we have our man there, Mr. Ozona, was reporting to us about the happenings. However, there's been a small development where he and the camera crew have been asked to leave, is what we're hearing. And also, we're being told that they were asked to delete footages that they had acquired while they were there, which is very interesting. I'm wondering why they wouldn't want this footage out there. According to him, he's told that it was he was approached by church personnel who also invited in the police and demanded that they delete every single material that they had recorded. We're not sure exactly what the situation is right now with that instance, but we're going to continue to carry you along and let you know what's happening. But what we do know, the information we have, is that as at the time he last reported with us, 3 fire trucks had emptied or were in the process of emptying their contents into the building, which was still on fire, and worshippers were asked to relocate to a different location for their service. This is from earlier when the 3rd fire truck came to the vicinity. It's still currently on fire, and there are authorities there at the moment. But we'll continue to, press on as the story develops, and we hope that the situation with them being asked to delete the footages that they have, it does not continue, because we need these. I find it very strange. I don't know why they would ask. Very strange
indeed. The thing about Nigerians and their dislike for the press is very interesting.
Yeah, but we're trying to help you out. But now let's move into our next big story, and this concerns you and I, our stomachs. Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous nation and largest economy, is facing a serious threat of food insecurity and malnutrition, and that could impact millions of its citizens this year. According to the World Bank's latest food security report, 7 states across the northwest and northeast regions are projected to be at crisis food security levels in 2024. The states include Borno, Adamawa, Kaduna, Katsina, Yobe, Sokoto, and Zamfara. Now, these regions have been severely affected by persistent insecurity and armed conflict, disrupting farming activities and also livelihoods.
Now, areas such as Bandam, Bama, Guza, Mala, and Marti are expected to experience emergency food security levels due to limited household food stock and access to market and humanitarian aid. And currently, these areas already suffer from a large-scale humanitarian crisis with 8.3 million people in need of assistance. So without immediate action, the number of people suffering from acute malnutrition in the affected states will increase. And so to discuss this pressing issue and explore potential solutions, we're joined by Seun Akinwa, an agripreneur and farmer. Well, Seun, thank you so much for coming on, and we appreciate you for doing this with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's start with, to just sort of capture the current situation that we find ourselves. What are the main contributing factors, to the current food insecurity crisis that we're seeing in Nigeria, particularly in the northwest and even northeast Nigeria?
I will first say thanks for this opportunity to be on your station. Regarding the food crisis, the food situation, it is expected. If you consider so many factors, the variables, insecurity, then one of the major factors we'll talk about is the government, the will of the government to curb certain issues. They wouldn't tell us that they didn't know that we're going to have, that is, produce glitch in certain areas of the country. The main reason why we take data, we take inventory of every stock is for us to know where there will be issues and to find a way to curb the situation. Our proactive nature, or the way we react to crisis in this country, is something to be addressed. So I feel it's one of the major factors. Then we talk about outbreak of diseases, pests, although those are still negligible, so to say. Let us first come to terms with one reality. Nigeria is not just responsible for, that is the Nigerian farmers. We are not just responsible for the supply of produce to only Nigeria. Let's have that at the back of our minds. Most of our produce, let's say a large chunk of our produce, is going to other countries in West Africa. And one major contributory factor to that is our currency is falling. And if we check, you discover that we're encapsulated by CFA fund spending countries. Definitely, we have lesser supply here. Every farmer I know will want to sell his produce in such a way whereby we maximize its profit. So let me leave that at that.
Okay.
Now.
Well, thank you very much, Seun.
Yeah.
Now, given the ongoing security challenges that we have, which you also mentioned, and the disruption in farming activities, what immediate actions do you think the government can do to help stem these issues?
It's unfortunate importation, because you can't have tomato, for instance. There's a duration where you can get tomato from seed to mature or ripened fruits. So it's not something where you can just snap your finger and shazam, you have products. No, when there is, presently we have a deficit. Farmers have what they call, where there's undersupply. We can't cater for the masses presently, because first and foremost, the little we have to supply, we have domestic consumers. Now the domestic consumers, the reason why prices are skyrocketing.
Okay. All right, Seun, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have to take a break on this conversation because we need to bring the sports and news. And then when we come back, we're going... Oh, he's still on there, unfortunately.
And of course, you are welcome to Sports on Breakfast Extra. I'm Udoka Njoko. Now, at the ongoing African Athletics Championship, Nigerian athletes such as Shade Olayoye won silver in the women's hammer throw, producing a best effort of 67.72 meters. In men's shot put event, it was Chukwuebuka Enekwechi who won gold. Meanwhile, Team Nigeria's quartet of Emmanuel Ojeli, Ella Onojuwewo, and there was also Dubem Nwachukwu and Patience Okon-George. They won silver in the mixed 4x400 meter event with a time of 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Now, this feat was achieved despite allegations of poor planning and treatment of the athletes by the organizers that saw stars like Cote d'Ivoire's Talou Smith pull out of the tournament. Still talking about athletics now, Ghana has been awarded the rights to host the 2026 Confederation of African Athletics Seniors Championships, triumphing over Botswana in a competitive bid. Now, Ghana Athletics announced on Saturday that the West African nation will host the 2026 edition. Now, out of the 15 countries that voted for the next competition host, Ghana garnered 12 votes, while Botswana managed only 3. Now, Ghana's successful bid was led by a delegation including Deputy Director General of the National Sports Authority, Bawa Majid. There was also the President of Ghana Athletics, Bawa Fusaini, and Vice President in charge of administration, Charles Osei Asibe. Now, following the CAA General Assembly in Douala, where it was announced that Botswana and Ghana are the countries being considered, Ghana was encouraged to bid for the prestigious event, leveraging its world-class facilities showcased during the recent African Games 2023 and the CAA Region 2 Seniors Championships. Moving over to football matters now, President of the Nigeria Football Federation, Ibrahim Gusau, will present the Nigeria Premier Football League Winners' Trophy to champions, Rangers International Football Club of Enugu, at the new Zaria Road Stadium in Jos on Sunday. Now, the head of the NFF is expected to be the main guest at the event. The champions, who secured their 8th Nigeria title by defeating Bendel Insurance 2-0 at the Nnamdi Azikiwe Stadium last weekend, will be playing against relegated Gombe United Football Club in a match that evokes contrasting emotions. Now, the much-loved Savannah Scorpions are already contemplating life in the Nigeria National League, while the Flying Antelopes, 1977 Africa Cup Winners' Cup champions, countenance flying Nigerians' flag at the prestigious CAF Champions League competition for the first time in many years. And of course, they look forward to representing Nigeria and doing well than other clubs that have represented Nigeria right there on the continental stage. And remember, there's also the battle for relegation because Sporting Lagos will be in action against Shooting Stars. If Sporting Lagos win, they will survive being relegated from the NPFL this season. But if they lose and other results do not go in their favor, then Sporting Lagos will make it down to the Nigeria National League. All right, to the world of car racing, talking about Formula One, McLaren's Lando Norris pipped Max Verstappen's Red Bull to pole position at the Spanish Grand Prix in a gripping qualifying session. Now, Verstappen had appeared out of reach when he improved his own time, which was already fastest by more than 0.2 seconds on his final run. Norris crossed the finish line a few seconds later to beat Verstappen and take his first pole of the year. Lewis Hamilton out-qualified teammate George Russell for only the second time this season, as of course the Mercedes drivers took 3rd and 4th position respectively. Now, the performance underlined the re-emergence of Mercedes as contenders close to the front after a series of car development as they beat the Ferrari drivers Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz to 5th and 6th place despite an upgrade on the Italian cars. Now, American sprinter and world champion Sha'Carri Richardson has qualified for the Paris Olympic Games, winning at a time 10.71 seconds at the U.S. Olympic Trials in Eugene, Oregon. Now, for the Paris 2024 Games, it will be Richardson's Olympic debut, who in 2021 was disqualified from the Tokyo Games after testing positive for marijuana. Now, this marks Richardson's historic return to the Olympics tracks after winning previous world titles. And of course, that's a wrap on Sports Update on Breakfast Central. I am Udoka Njoko. Thank you for watching.
Many thanks, Ndoka, for that. We appreciate you, by the way. Yesterday, we had this nice back and forth with myself and Favor, and also Luzina as well.
Yeah, I was about to do the finishing thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, we're just having a conversation about it, right? And we also went out to Lagos and we spoke to a number of sport enthusiasts about Finidi's resignation.
Yeah.
And we were floored by the responses, right? And what is your take? I've never had that conversation with you, so I'd like to. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, a couple of pundits out there said that he was destined to fail because he didn't work hand in hand with the NFF.
Chai.
And yeah, that's the sad truth. And now he no longer has a job with the NFF, talking about him being the Super Eagles manager. But he has moved on, and of course, we just hope that things would align for Finidi George. Whatever drama that happened between Finidi George, the NFF, and Victor Osimhen, it it should be put aside and we move on, because Nigeria is on the verge of not qualifying for the World Cup again. So the NFF need to focus, employ a new coach that would see Nigeria through to qualifying for the World Cup. And for Finidi George, we should just let sleeping dogs.
Udoka, you're being very diplomatic in the answer. It's almost like you're media trained. And so, which I'm about to ask you, right? And honestly, I really hope you be very fair in your answer. Does this mean the end for homegrown or Nigerian coaches, you know, coaching at the highest level? Because we all celebrated the fact that Finidi was taking the mantle. Now, don't forget there was Samson, the late Samson Siasia, who did it. But hey, Finidi George has coached as well. He has his certificates. He also has played on different, very, very great platforms as well. So is this the end, or is it just a bad time to taking up the mantle, given that he came in three months in?
Well, he actually knows the Super Eagles very well when he worked under Jose Peseiro, and I thought for once that he was going to take charge and handle the team well, but it didn't happen for him. Is it the end of homegrown coaches? No, it is not the end. If these coaches are trained, they definitely will have a chance to be the coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. But for George Finidi, it was just sad that what happened with himself and the NFF. But definitely, this is not the end of George Finidi. This is not the end of homegrown coaches that are taking charge of the Super Eagles. And remember, the late Stephen Keshi took charge of the team, who won the Nations Cup. There's also the likes of Samson Siaza, who once played for the Super Eagles, also take charge of the team. We have a lot of these guys who are well experienced to take charge. So it is definitely not the end.
How long, when did he resign? He resigned last week?
About 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. When did he come? When did he come in?
Well, in less than a month, and he took charge of 2 games.
Less than a month. So he came less than a month ago.
One game and lost one.
I just wanted to say that's a whole different level to the term 1 minute man.
Hi.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow. Let's go.
We're gonna. Hey, Udoka, we're certain that you're not. You've taken the proper 10 minutes of our time. But thank you so much. We switch gears now to bring you the news, and we have Adebola Adeduba.
If I haven't put us in trouble already.
I'm trying to switch gears. Just let me do it. Adebola, can you hear all the madness going on around here?
I mean, it's crazy.
Please, we'll go on a short break. When we're ready, we'll bring you the news. Adebola, please, after this break, stay with us.
Hello and welcome once again to Breakfast Headlines. I am Adebola Adedba. Let's begin by telling you that an early morning fire at the Christ Embassy Church, Ikeja, Lagos, reportedly destroyed property worth millions of naira. The fire incident was not the first to be recorded at the Nigerian headquarters of the church. So we recorded that another fire incident occurred in the church in March 2014, which raised generator houses, damaging about 10 generators. The Lagos State Fire Service fire trucks from the Alausa station were seen at the site of the incident. No casualties so far have been reported. We have on ground News Central's Uzona Onoye, who has been following this development. Let's connect with him at this point in time. Good morning, Uzona. We understand that you were asked to leave the premises of Christ Embassy, and even asked to delete footages. Where are you now, and what's going on?
Okay, we are still in that environment because the last time we came up, we were quite close to the building. But at the time we were ending the live, we were besieged by security officials of the church and men of the Nigerian police force, persuading us to leave the environment and threatening to seize our camera and even delete the material that we've recorded already. It was a bit rough at that moment. The argument was long and it took a while. That was why we've not been able to come up again before now. So what we did was to walk away a bit far from the church. But if you look behind me, you will still see the building. The smoke is still coming up. And the flame had been contained by the fire service. As at the last count, I have seen not less than 6 water trucks of the fire service that went in there and emptied their content into the inferno. The flame had been contained, as I can tell you, but the smoke is still there. So it's going down gradually. It's going down gradually. The situation is not as bad as a lot of people thought it would have been until we get access into the building, if we will, to find out exactly the level of damage inside. But the resistance, how do I put it now? The hostility here is unimaginable because officials of the church made it clear that they will not allow any part of this story to go out into the media. I told them anyway that we saw the story in the media in the first place, on the social media, before we even arrived here. So there was nothing to hide anymore. And as a matter of fact, there's no need to stop media coverage of an incident of this magnitude. But to avoid the violence that they were ready to create, they were ready for the violence. To avoid it, we had to walk away a little bit. We have seen other media houses, TV stations, popular news TV stations also come, and they were given even worse treatment than we were given because we were already warned, because we were here earlier. So that is the situation here. Some church members are still arriving. If you see, you can see them walk down, but when they get there, they will be told to move to another place where the church service is holding, because no service is holding here today. That's exactly what is going on right now.
Well, thank you so much for your correspondence, Uzona Onoye. We'll keep in touch with you to see how things pan out. Thank you once again. And now to security matters. Suspected bandits have kidnapped the parish priest of St. Raymond Catholic Church, Dambagu, South Zamfara State, Reverend Father Mika Suleiman. The spokesperson of Zamfara State Police Command, Yadzi Abubakar, said the priest was kidnapped on Saturday at his residence in the Damba area, Gusau. He notes that the incident was not reported to the police, but the command has deployed the police tactical squad to trail the kidnappers and ensure his safe return. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria has threatened to shut down all petrol stations in Adamawa and Taraba State over alleged harassment of its members by the Nigeria Customs Service. The secretary of the association in Adamawa State made this known to newsmen, accusing the customs anti-smuggling unit, code-named Operation Whirlwind, of abandoning their duties at the border areas and targeting legitimate businesses.
When product is deliberated, it simply means the product are free market without any government interference. On this regards, we are calling on the attention of His Excellency Governor Ahmed Umaru Filtri, the People Governor, being the Chief Security Officer of the state, to step in as the matter of urgency and of public interest to do the needful by calling the men of the Nigerian Customs Service to order, so as to quench the escalation that may probably lead to industrial actions by all the stakeholders of petroleum products, which are IMAN, NATO, and all branches of NUPEN, which include PTD, IND, PSW, ELD, and SUTACAT, etc., and all other in the business of supplying and distribution of petroleum products in the state. Lastly, as from Monday, the 25th of June 2024, if our prayers were not answered or addressed, we will not hesitate to unanimously withdraw our services of supplies and distribution of petroleum in the entire states of Adamawa and Taraba State.
And that's all on the news. I am Adebola Adeduba. Let's take a short break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Still a big story as we discuss food insecurity, and we have with us from before Sheon Akinwa, who's a farmer, and we were talking about the situation in Nigeria. Now, Sheon, if you're still there with us, would like to ask you this question regarding the farming template in Nigeria. How can the government help or aid individuals to absolutely take this on as their occupation? For instance, there's something called family farming, if I'm not mistaken. How can they be aided by the government?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would like to say, ever since the creation of this country, this contraption, Nigeria, farmers have never had it this good. Saying farmers are concerned by this insecurity will mean we're having a very wrong perception. I would like to disabuse you of that because we're really enjoying it, seriously. And that doesn't, I don't want to appear cynical, but it's about the business. And why is it so? Because the demand outweighs the supply. If you want to how will I ameliorate or make these things less, the effect of this food crisis less severe, government, they need to be more serious. Seriously, because we talk about farmers participating, households participating in farming. Yes, it's a good proposal, but how realistic is it? That's a question we ask ourselves. How many individuals? Yeah, we have urban farming, fine, yeah. But the question is it really tenable? Let's say individuals say in Festac Town, for instance, yes, the buildings. I just don't see it as something that is very, very realistic. Yeah, well, say maybe the sub-rural area or areas whereby there is enough room to do it, fine. But the question now is, are they going to be able to cater with a little space, be able to cater for every other thing they need? So whenever we come up with proposal, let us be realistic. The other time, Mr. Mokri, yeah, someone I really, really respect anyway, was making certain suggestions, certain proposals. You get corn, you feed your layer corn, you get egg. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way at all. So if you continue to feed, yeah.
So then what works then? Because we're pressed for time, right? Yeah, in adopting strategies, and, to find a lasting solution, to this issue. Because when we think about it, millions are at stake, children are at stake, and malnutrition, acute malnutrition is on the horizon. What is a lasting solution?
The lasting solution is for government to take seriously the smallholders. When I mean smallholder, I'm talking about the small farmers. They are the ones to cater for the major domestic supplies.
How can they do that?
Big farmers. Yeah. For instance, let me give you my environment, for instance. I would be very, very wrong, and it would be unfair to the government by saying, oh, the federal government hasn't shown interest in supporting farmers. No, they've been doing it. As a matter of fact, because from the information I have, they've been spending millions and billions to support the farmers. But it does not get to where it's supposed to get to. It never has, and it has never been effective. In the sense that when there is a particular grant, it goes to these big farmers. And the big farmers don't really, most of them, they have where they supply their goods. ShopRite, eateries, exports, and the likes. It is only the smallholders, because when they factor the cost of moving, the logistics of moving their products to a distant area, maybe to Benin Republic, Cameroon, Cotonou, they discover that that logistics will be quite expensive. Okay, they take it to the nearby farmers. But the government is not focused. That is one. Then two, what is our hunger response? This thing didn't start yesterday. For instance, let's say there's a case of malignancy. Someone has a sign of maybe cancer. It's at the stage, beyond the stage 2, the stage 3, that before it becomes malignant. When you have signs that, okay, those that planted, okay, the nursery, how many of those things has moved from the seed rate to seedling rate? If there's enough data, one government will now be able to make prediction and find a way to support and to ameliorate, that is to prevent the effects, to cushion the effects. But the government is not doing that. And I will also say something. The ministries that handle these things, they are one of the most corrupt in Nigeria, because I know them very well.
All right.
Well, now, when there's a grant, let me explain. When there's a grant, say, okay, for instance, there's a particular World Bank grant. They'll say, okay, this grant wants to support, say, maybe 10,000 farmers. Instead of meeting these small 10,000 small farmers, they are going to meet a big boy having like 100 or 1,000 acres. And you now say, okay, those acres is going to represent the 10,000 farmers. Now, when this guy gets this money, he's going to use it for his major export, and then they don't get to pay it back because he's selling the product not to the immediate market.
So you're alleging cases of racketeering in the system.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
It happens a lot. All right, so we have your statement saying that this happens a lot, and this would hamper growth when it comes to small farming. Well, Seun, I hate to end this conversation. I do hope that we can continue this another time, but Seun, many thanks for coming on. And that's Seun Akinwa. He is a farmer, agripreneur, and was talking to us about addressing food insecurity as it impacts food in Nigeria. Food prices in Nigeria, as reports are now saying that acute malnutrition is on its way. We'll take a short break at this point. When we come back on the other side, there is more. We got Focus Africa. We have more on security as well as commemorating World Sickle Cell Day. Stay with us. It's time for us to take a look at the evolving security dynamics in West Africa. Now, recent reports have highlighted Turkey's deployment of fighters from the Turkish-controlled Free Syrian Army to several Sahel countries, including Nigeria. Now, this development, confirmed by various Middle Eastern and Western media outlets, corroborates what SBM intelligence has been monitoring since late 2023.
Now, these fighters are ostensibly deployed to guard Turkish-operated businesses, but the nature of their mission has raised significant concerns about regional security and stability. Now, today we delve deeper into this issue with insight from experts in Local Report. Joining us now is Confidence McHarry, a senior security analyst, SBM Intelligence. Thank you very much for joining us on the story here this morning.
Yeah, thank you once again for having me.
Grant, so I've got a question for Confidence here. I'd like to know, regarding recent reports, it indicates that Turkey is deploying fighters from the Turkish-controlled Free Syrian Army to several countries in the Sahel. So can you give us an overview of what the development actually entails?
All right, so since December 2023, it has been some kind of a little bit of a movement. For people who've been watching the Sahel region, especially the West African parts of the Sahel, you notice that the exit of American and French military presence has led to an opening where other people, other players would come in. So Russia has taken advantage of the situation. Turkey and the UAE is also taking advantage of the situation. But since we're talking about Turkey today, what SBM has been monitoring since started in late December when the first news that they were going to deploy fighters to Niger first landed. And so Initially, we thought there was only going to be Niger, but over the past few years, we've noticed that the same deployments have been done in Togo, they've been done in Mali, and now, according to what reports we're hearing, they're also being deployed to Nigeria. So ostensibly, they were there to guard Turkish businesses. But for what organizations like the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights have said is that since December till date, about 10 of them have been killed. In the 1,000 forces have been deployed. And when we dug deeper, we saw that they were not killed by basically guarding Turkish businesses. They were actively involved in some of the anti-Sahaelian operations against jihadists and Islamists in the Sahel.
Against?
Wow. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, speaking about the reports that you just mentioned, it mentions that these fighters received training before being deployed. What kind of training did they even receive? Let's start there. And how effective is it likely to be in terms of this training that they have received?
I should say the kind of training they received is light, very light, and it will also be reflected in the amount of stipends they were given. I think one particular report said annually they are supposed to earn $1,300, which is very meager. And so what the Turkish intelligence or the mercenary group that controls these ex-Free Syrian Army fighters hope to do is that they will carry on their experience in fighting in former rebel-held territories in Aleppo and then bring to West Africa. So they felt that their training, especially their combat experience in the northern part of Syria, is enough for them to just give them a light training and then throw them into the action in West Africa. So it has led to concerns because looking at their history in the Middle East, especially in Syria, they were involved in some of the worst human rights abuses in Aleppo, even something the United Nations have even called them out on. So when you carry this poorly trained and, should I say, in the manner of speaking, poorly motivated fighters to a particular place called the Sahel, where a lot of human rights abuses, both by state forces and non-state actors, take place, it just it's a ticking time bomb waiting to happen in a manner of speaking.
What about the allegations against human rights violations by the Syrian army? Now, if they're in a relationship with Turkey and we also have that relationship going, how does that implicate Nigeria in any way?
So what we found is that our sources in the Nigerian government denied it, that the fighters have been deployed to Nigeria. But let's even assume for a moment that these guys are not deployed to Nigeria. The mere thoughts that they are deployed next door to Nigeria in Niger leaves a lot of concern. Last week I was in a meeting with an ex-French diplomat, and then it was incredulous at the thought that Nigeria would be sleeping with two eyes closed, and then there are lots of foreign fighters, foreign mercenaries, foreign governments operating, not necessarily even in Nigerian soil, but at least close to that. So the human rights violation toll is there, the concerns are there. But in a region like the Sahel, where state governments are some of the worst abusers of human rights, especially when it comes to extrajudicial killings, I don't really think that they would necessarily be that perturbed to the kind of deployments they are seeing, because in the first place, Turkey is a very good partner to many of the Sahelian countries. One of the things we discovered is that the deployments, especially to Mali, was not necessarily to fight the jihadists. It was to serve as a Praetorian guard for the current military, the junta in Mali, which is led by Colonel Assimi Goïta, because there seems to be this rivalry between the defense minister and I think Sadio Kamara is his name, and the current junta leader, which he is suspecting, the latter is suspecting that the former is up to something, trying to overthrow him. So he brought in these Turkish militants as a guard against this, because he could not trust his own army, he could not trust his own military. So the end is here for different purposes. Some are for guard duties, for businesses, some are for guard duties for presidential palaces, some are for guard duties for fighting against Sahelian militants. You
talk about Sadat, which is the involvement of this, very controversial private Turkish military company. You've highlighted this, but what role does Sadat play, in these deployments, besides just the ones that you mentioned? What would be the implications of their involvement?
In the first place, we will have to take into account the global appetite for the use of state-backed non-state armed groups and fighting in carrying out operations in what we call situations of gray zone operations. So many states do not really want to expend that much resources, so the private actors come in. So we've seen the same thing in the Wagner Group, which is now called the Russia-Africa Corps. In Nigeria, I think in 2015, before the 2015 election held, the government of Goodluck Jonathan employed the Services of Executive Outcomes, the South African PMC, and now we are seeing the same thing in Turkey. So it's low cost, it's high rewarding. So a lot of these governments have been doing it. And despite Nigeria's protestations, it doesn't seem to work. I remember that when Buhari was president, he spoke quite a lot against this kind of gray zone operations. But given Nigeria's weak standing in the region and given its frayed relationship within ECOWAS, it doesn't really have that clout to impose on member states to follow its lead. So it could talk and talk, all of them would do what they want to do. So in the first place, it's a pointer to how state capacity has severely weakened, and it's also another pointer to how the weakening of state capacity has now grown another impetus for people to assume state functions and then to thrive in the same state functions. So I do think that in the times to come, you're going to be seeing a lot more of them. Maybe not necessarily from Russia alone, maybe not necessarily from Turkey, but I think countries like from the UAE and the likes of them who also are active players in the Sahel region.
Very interesting stuff indeed. Whilst we're talking about the regions, we've seen the development of Turkey's broader geopolitical strategy in Africa, and very silently moving and spreading its tentacles, I would say. But particularly in relation to its competition with France as well and other Western powers, silently, but is it powerful?
Yep, it is. It is, because the relationship between Nigeria, for instance, and Turkey goes back at least 100 years. The Izala sect in Nigeria, for instance, has close ties to Turkey, just like the Shiites in Nigeria has close ties with Iran. But one thing you have to give credit to the Turks is the fact that, according to what you said, they've been silently moving. This silent moves has been in the working since 2019. I remember then when French President Emmanuel Macron actively accused both Turkey and Russia for inflaming anti-French sentiments in the Sahel. So it was more like they have not necessarily been sitting on their hands waiting for the French and the Americans to leave. They have been trying to push them out through influence operations, influence peddling, and then trying to activate the soft power they have been using through religion for about a century. But what really has buoyed Turkish influence in the Sahel through the use of Sadat and the likes is that over the past 4 years, they've shown capacity in terms of military. They've been involved in a lot of conflicts, not only in northern Syria, but in the Middle East, and also in Libya, where the Sadat private mercenary corps was very, very instrumental in preventing General Khalifa Haftar from taking over Tripoli some 3 years ago. And very importantly, what gives impetus to Turkish influence is the use of the Bayraktar-TB2 drones, especially in combat zones in Nagorno-Karabakh, in the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan in 2020. Without the entry of those Turkish drones, it was very, very difficult to envisage an Azeri victory. But the Turkish drones changed the tide. So what happened between 2020 and now is that we've seen a lot of countries in West Africa and Africa as a whole ordering for Turkish drones. So in competition with Western drones, which are much more expensive and difficult to maintain. So Turkey supplies these drones to Libya, it supplies to Nigeria. I think the relationship between Turkish defense, aerospace defense industry and Nigeria dates back to when Buratai was chief of army staff. So that was when we have started, trying to get parts of, Turkish drones to fight insurgency and insecurity in the northwest. So these relationships transcend continents, transcend borders and everything. So I think as time goes on, the relationship is much likelier to develop way more than
Nigeria is in possession of some of these drones now, aren't we? Almost half of Africa are either in possession or are awaiting delivery of these drones. These relationships with Sadat, like we've mentioned, interestingly, they're based on intel, information that, well, one would want to guard as a sovereignty, as a nation. What are the risks then if we have Turkey having most of our data or information about our, perhaps maybe, whatever it is these drones are
sophisticated technology.
Not just technology, but information as well.
Drone,
How is it a risk?
But on paper, it's supposed to be a risk, you understand? But the question of national security is not so much a burden on the political leaders of the region as much as regime security. So the people you are concerned about, the people who should be concerned about these things, they are not necessarily concerned with foreign countries having their data. They are more about control. So if they don't mind handing over this sensitive data through electronic intelligence or through data peddling or anything to these countries, as far as it ensures their survival. So the average Nigerian elite or the average Nigerian leaders thinking, the most important thing is not national security. it is regime security. So it doesn't even mind aligning with the devil to get that particular thing done or to get that particular point, which is why, back to the point I made earlier about my ex-French diplomats being concerned that Nigeria is not concerned about the influx of these foreign elements into an area where it is naturally considered Nigeria's background. The people who are supposed to be concerned did not really see it as a core, and much of the people who should bring their attention to it did not really see it much as a responsibility. And to an extent, it feeds into what I personally have been written, and SBM has been shouting for quite some time, that Nigeria's diplomatic clout, Nigeria's geopolitical standing in the region has been so badly defeated and so badly depleted that our domestic issues are taking too much of our time that we do not readily see the need to play geopolitical games that we are supposed to be playing. As a result, we have left that responsibility to outside players from the Middle East, from Eastern Europe, and from the West to play in the same space where it would naturally should have been thriving.
Confidence. That's a very, very valuable insight, I would say. And honestly, I wish I could stretch this conversations even further, but unfortunately, we're pressed for time and we have to let you go. Thank you so much, Confidence.
Thank you so much.
This situation, of course, as you said, it requires very careful monitoring and coordinated response from Nigeria, especially for those that are concerned when it comes to our geopolitical space. And this Confidence Makari is a senior security analyst at SBM Intelligence. We take a short break and we come back on the other side. There is more on Breakfast Extra. Stay with us. Well, it seems we have a lot of specials today, so much so that we had to play the big story. But in fact, it's our Wellness Central today. And it's a special segment as well, as we would like to commemorate World Sickle Cell Day 2024. So today we join millions around the globe in raising awareness about sickle cell disease, a genetic blood disorder that affects millions of people worldwide, particularly in Africa.
Now, this day is dedicated to educating the public, supporting patients and also their families, and advocating for improved healthcare and research. We have a very special guest to shed light on the efforts being made here in Nigeria to combat this disease. Joining us via Zoom is Dr. Annette Akinshete, the National Director and CEO of Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. Dr. Annette, you are welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome. Now, please, let's start by if you could tell us about the significance of World Sickle Cell Day and why it's important for us to observe this day.
Excellent. So very briefly, it was in 2008 that the United Nations actually passed a regulation, if you like, for World Sickle Cell Day, that June 19th be celebrated as World Sickle Cell Day. As you know, I'm sure you're conversant with the World AIDS Day, World Malaria Day, all those world days that are enacted by the World United Nations. So we clamored over many years, really, for a day to be set aside for the world to celebrate World Sickle Cell Day. And as you know, this is a condition that really affects mostly us in this part of the world, in the tropics. So it is not something that affects everyone equally globally. So it was not so much, if you like, an emergency or an urgent need for the rest of the world. So, but we pressed for it. And today we do have a day set aside for raising awareness locally and globally about sickle cell. And I'm glad that the Federal Ministry of Health and many subnationals, many state governments have taken it up very seriously and are really marking the day by raising awareness and carrying out other activities to rally around Nigerians to come to know more about the condition, less about the stigma, or know about the stigma and not to stigmatize or discriminate against persons who have sickle cell. There's so much to unpack around sickle cell. It's a very serious condition. Nobody says it's still in the back, but we want to be able to celebrate it, celebrate the people who have the condition and help them live normal, productive lives.
Yeah, indeed. And one of the challenges you just mentioned, which is quite major, is stigmatization that the people living with sickle cell disease face. But what are some, besides stigmatization, that they face? I mean, you had a foundation, I'm guessing access to healthcare?
There's so much, but the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria was established, in fact, we're 30 years this year, established 30 years ago for this purpose, because it was clear that there was a gap, that the government was doing so much, but they had to prioritize as usual. So sickle cell fell through the cracks. So Sickle Cell Foundation was established to fill that gap and establish a national center for sickle cell. And this is the first of its kind in the whole of Africa. It's here in Lagos, opposite Luth. And it was a call to the WHO's, it was a response to WHO's call that if any condition is determined to be of public health significance, that the country has to establish a center that addresses all aspects of that condition. So we at Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, we do everything sickle cell, from prevention to treatment, care, support, and now even cure. I mean, as you know, I think you remember that we have established a center for bone marrow transplantation, and that's the cure for sickle cell. So we do everything in the entire spectrum, as well as research and capacity building. Anything you can think about around sickle cell programming, Sickle Cell Foundation is championing and rallying all the stakeholders along to be part of the story.
It's interesting that you mentioned the cure, that's bone marrow transplant. Most people don't know about this, but however, how expensive and how accessible is this cure that you speak about?
Good question. It's expensive. That's the truth. As a public health physician, I always like to talk about what I call the pyramid of care. And the pyramid of care is the base. The base of that pyramid is where we as public health physicians like to focus. That is the most care for the most people. And when I say the most care, I mean the basic care. Persons with sickle cell need to take medication every day of their lives to keep well and to keep alive. And that means daily paludrine to prevent malaria, or proguanil to prevent malaria, daily folic acid to be sure that the blood cells are replenished, painkillers almost every day, name it. So and then now we have newer drugs that prevent crisis. So these have to be taken every day of their lives. And I tell you, these people spend out of pocket. The health insurance companies tell us that sickle cell is not good business. So they don't really take care of sickle cell patients. So leave that as it is. So it's left to us, entities like us, to go around, hand in hand, if you like, to mobilize Nigerians, charitable persons and entities to put together funding so we can take care of persons who have sickle cell disorder. I think I sidetracked. There's a particular question you asked me, and I was building up to it. I don't remember now.
Well, I had asked earlier about a cure, how affordable it is, and how accessible it is.
Exactly. That cure is not affordable. So I said that base of the pyramid is the most care for the most people, comprehensive care, so that you're treating the patients not only physically, but also mentally, emotionally, because it's everything. But the apex is where bone marrow transplantation lies. We have it in Nigeria and in our center, so that it's available and accessible to Nigerians. Quality and safe bone marrow transplantation for Nigerians locally available. But I said it's not cheap, it's expensive. Most Nigerians who access it have to go abroad, to America, to Europe, and to India. But the reason we have it here is that Nigeria is a country with the highest burden of sickle cell in the world. So if we don't have a sickle cell, a bone marrow center, who should have? So for that purpose, and to encourage Nigerians to stay back and access it here, we have a center developed. Having said that, not every patient with sickle cell is a good candidate for bone marrow transplantation. The doctors who do it are very selective. They will look at you and determine, let's weigh the pros and cons. If sickle cell is not so bad, we can manage it properly and you can live well. It's better you stay on that lane than take on the risks, because it's not a stroll in the park either to have bone marrow transplantation. It's fraught with a lot of risks. But it is also true that once it is done and done properly, which like we are doing here, it is safety and quality, done and done properly to the right candidates, is like day and night, or night and day. If someone who was SS becomes AA, or becomes AS, depending on who the donor is. So it's imperative that we have it, but it's not for everybody, and it's expensive.
Dr. Kinshete, I would like to also ask about other recent advancements and advancement in treatments that are affordable. And when we're talking about affordable, can you give a bit of like numbers on there in terms of affordability?
Let me just talk affordability. I was talking about it just on the 19th. The average person who has sickle cell disorder who takes folic acid and proguanil on a daily basis, these are the basic meds, maybe some painkillers, because they're always, like, the hallmark of disorder is pain. They spend an average of 5,000 naira a month. 5,000 naira a month is not cheap for many Nigerians. And that's when we don't add hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea is a more expensive medication, but it prevents crisis and really improves quality of life for persons with sickle cell. If we add that, if we add blood transfusion, which it tend to be, many patients are on chronic blood transfusion, that is, they need to be transfused at least 3 times a month. If you add that, we're talking about 100,000 naira or more per month. If you add exchange blood transfusion and further admission, you're talking about sometimes 1 million naira a month. It may not be every month, but that's how much they have to bring out of their pockets to pay. So we really have to focus on patient care, patient treatment, and you mentioned affordability, but who takes care of these monies? All are the HMOs and what's Nigerian government doing about ensuring that HMOs register persons with sickle cell and have them on board and manage them? And because not everybody is going to be needing treatment every day, but we need to be sure that out-of-pocket spending stops. It is not sustainable. But it brings me to an innovation that Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria has brought this year, our 30th year. And I think it's like a gift to Nigeria. We've looked and seen that HMOs are not registering us to take care of patients with sickle cell. We're looking for a more sustainable way of ensuring that patients are cared for in terms of medication and treatment. And that is what we have called a wait list initiative or waiting list initiative. So all over Nigeria, the reason in fact came about because people were asking that Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, you're just in Lagos, you're not in Akwa Ibom, you're not here. And we have to remind them we're not government, mind you, but we work with government and encourage government to do what they should do. Okay, but we're not government. So the wait list is such that we're going to be populating a database. So anywhere you are in Nigeria, north, south, east, west, if you have a problem like the complications of sickle cell, like the chronic leg ulcers that fail to heal and you can't treat it, you cannot pay for it, or hip degeneration that requires hip replacement, we place you on a wait list and mobilize the private sector, oil companies, banks. Many of them want to engage, but they're not sure exactly how to engage. First, they need an entity that's transparent, like Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, but they also need to see numbers. What are we talking about in terms of who are we going to manage? Are we going to treat 1,000 patients in a month? And so they put money to it. If you look at what happened during COVID, we mobilized the private sector and they jumped on board and worked with government to achieve this. So this wait list, we believe, is going to work. Already, Nigerians are registering, and there's a database that the media team is doing. So we want to be sure that anybody with sickle cell can get treatment without, they can't even afford it. They go around begging for money to pay for themselves. So the wait list should help.
Oh, Dr. Akinshete, thank you for sharing your insights and thank you for the amazing and incredible work you and your team at the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria are doing. And it's very clear that healthcare is very important, especially for those living with the illness. Again, many thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And that's
Thank you so much.
And that's Dr. Agnes Akinshete. She is the National Director and CEO of Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria. And that's how we wrap up the show for today.
Yes, indeed. It has been quite the weekend from yesterday up until today. And for you, it's only been about yesterday and today. For us, it's been all week long. In fact, we never get to rest. But the fulfilling feeling of being at the end of every Sunday edition is the prize that we get to take home. And we hope that you've enjoyed the show as well today as we talked about many issues, security here in Nigeria, food security especially. And of course, we got to commemorate the World Sickle Cell Day, which was on the 19th, but all week, I guess.
Yes, indeed. Well, this is where we draw the curtains on today's show and this week's installment of Breakfast Extra. Make sure to keep it locked on here to News Central TV. We make sure to bring you the news. We are the center for the news. And also remember that coming up right after this will be in the game. And of course, at the top of the hour at noon will be the news. Adebola Adeduba will be on standby. Remember, you can follow us everywhere on social media. We're at News Central TV. Besides, my name is Judith at TV. You can find me everywhere else as well.
All right then. Goodbye. See you next week.
Mazino, you're supposed to say your name, Joe.
Oh, it was written there already. Mazino
Just say your name.
Bye-bye, everybody.